The dusty wind blew through the dry savanna of Mwend village, tossing brittle leaves into the air as goats bleated hungrily in the distance. By the edge of a shallow riverbank, a frail girl with knotted hair crouched low to the ground, her tiny fingers gripping tufts of wild grass. She bit into them like a starving animal, chewing slowly despite the bitter taste. Her sunburned skin clung tightly to her bones, and her eyes, wide, haunted, and too mature for her age, darted nervously in every direction. Children her age would have been at home, preparing for school, but she had no home, no name, no one, only the grass that barely filled her stomach and the cold ground she slept on every night. Old Mama Ziki, the herbalist known for her weathered skin and walking stick carved from a sacred fig tree, spotted her while searching for herbs along the river. "My child," she whispered, startled by the sight. "Are you eating grass?" The girl didn't answer. Her lips trembled, but no words came out. She only looked at Mama Ziki with eyes that seemed to carry lifetimes of pain. Mama Ziki felt her heart crack open. She knew desperation when she saw it. Without a second thought, she wrapped the girl in her faded shawl, muttering prayers beneath her breath. The village had seen its share of suffering, but this child, she was something else. Something strange. Something not of the dust and hunger she appeared to be. Mama Ziki brought the girl back to her small hut at the edge of the village. The neighbors watched with suspicion, murmuring among themselves. "Stray children bring demons," one muttered. "She's probably cursed," said another. But Mama Ziki, with her creaky legs and steady soul, paid them no mind. She gave the girl warm porridge mixed with honey and herbs to soothe her stomach. The child ate slowly at first, unsure if it was real. Then, like a storm had broken loose inside her, she devoured the food, tears streaming down her face. Still, she spoke not a word. Mama Ziki named her Amani, for peace, though the girl seemed anything but peaceful. She flinched at loud sounds, hoarded leftover crumbs under her pillow, and cried silently through the night. In the weeks that followed, Amani began to recover physically, but her silence remained. The villagers' curiosity grew. They asked where Mama Ziki had found her, but all she offered was, "The gods led me to her." No one pressed further, especially not after Mama Ziki threatened to curse anyone who laid a hand on the girl. Amani would sit by the river each evening, staring at the water as if waiting for something, or someone, to rise from its depths. She never smiled, never played with the other children, never sang the songs that filled the air during harvest time. Yet her eyes, sharp and observant, missed nothing, and when the local chief's son fell into the river one market day, it was Amani who jumped in and pulled him out, saving his life. That act changed everything. Suddenly, Amani was no longer just the grass-eating stray. She was the girl who had saved the chief's heir. People started treating her with cautious respect. Some offered her sweets. Others gave her second-hand clothes. The chief himself gave her a pair of new sandals. But still, she never spoke. It was as if her voice had been stolen. Mama Ziki suspected trauma too deep to be easily healed. But she also felt something else, something ancient. Amani's presence seemed to bring strange dreams and odd silences, as if nature itself paused in her presence. 10 years would pass before the truth of her origin would come out, shaking the entire village and rewriting the story of her name. But for now, Amani remained the silent girl by the river, once fed on grass, unknowingly carrying the bloodline of kings. Years passed like the slow churn of river clay during the dry season. Amani grew taller, leaner, her face transforming from haunted child to a graceful young woman. Yet the silence never left her. She moved like mist through the village, present felt but barely seen. The only person she ever allowed close was Mama Ziki, who had become both mother and guardian. Every morning, Amani helped gather herbs, and every night, She listened silently as Mama Ziki told her stories of spirits, queens, and ancestors. There was a particular story Mama Ziki repeated often. About a royal child stolen during a blood moon eclipse, never to be seen again. Amani always listened with wide eyes, her fingers tightening around the old woman's hand. She never said why the story touched her. She didn't need to. Then came the day she bled. Not from injury, but from the way girls become women. Amani ran from the hut in panic, her palms soaked in red. She thought she was dying. Mama Ziki found her trembling beneath the fig tree, weeping without sound. The old woman cleaned her up and prepared the traditional stew of womanhood, chanting softly. That night, while scrubbing Amani's stained wrapper, Mama Ziki noticed something she'd never seen before. A crescent-shaped birthmark on Amani's lower back, smooth and pale like moonlight. Her heart skipped. The missing heiress from the capital city wasn't the only clue a birthmark shaped like a crescent moon, but she shook the thought away. Too many girls had marks. It couldn't be. Still, the idea stuck like a tick in Mama Ziki's thoughts. She began to quietly gather old newspapers, listen to radio reports, and ask traveling traders about royal rumors from the capital. Amani, unaware of the storm brewing around her past, continued her routine. She had become a helper at the local health hut, assisting the midwife with births and herbal preparations. Despite her silence, mothers trusted her. Children clung to her skirt. Even livestock followed her when she passed. Some said she had a spirit's touch. Others whispered she was the ghost of a long-dead queen. Mama Ziki watched her closely, torn between fear and hope. What if Amani was more than just a forgotten orphan? What if the gods had returned her to the wrong place for the right reasons? One evening, a convoy of sleek, foreign-made vehicles rumbled into Mwend. The villagers gathered in confusion. Out stepped a man dressed in deep navy agbada, flanked by men in suits and a woman in Ankara heels with a tablet in hand. "We are searching for a missing girl," the woman announced. She would be about 16 now. She went missing 10 years ago during a political riot in Abono City. Her name is Princess Zara, daughter of His Majesty, Oba Adewale of Abono Kingdom. The villagers murmured. Mama Ziki's spoon dropped from her hand. Amani, who had been balancing a clay pot nearby, froze. Her eyes met the woman's. Something inside her stirred, like a drumbeat rising from deep within. She didn't know the name Zara, but the rhythm in her bones recognized it. The night after the convoy's visit, Mwend village pulsed with rumors. Some swore the girl they sought had been taken by spirits long ago. Others argued that Zara had died during the riots, and these people were only chasing shadows. Amani sat outside Mama Ziki's hut, eyes fixed on the distant hills. Her fingers trembled slightly as she ran them over the handle of the clay pot she'd dropped earlier. She didn't understand why the name Zara made her stomach twist, or why the sight of the dignified woman in Ankara heels felt like a memory rather than a stranger's presence. Mama Ziki stood quietly behind her, arms folded. "The moon does not ask permission to shine," she said softly. Amani turned toward her, questioning. Mama Ziki didn't explain. She simply whispered a prayer and went back inside. The next morning, a team of officials returned. This time they brought with them an aged man, His Majesty, Oba Adewale. His eyes, though dulled by age, still burned with the loss of his daughter. He spoke little, but his presence filled the air like ancestral incense. Amani was summoned along with every other girl around her age. One by one, they stood before the king. Most curtsied or trembled. Amani did neither. She only stared at him, her lips parted slightly, something deep in her soul stirring. The king's eyes locked onto hers. He stepped forward. "What is your name, child?" he asked. Mama Ziki stepped in quickly. "We call her Amani, but she has no past. Not that we know." The officials requested a private session to examine Amani's birthmark. Mama Ziki protested, but the king's gentle hand rested on her shoulder. "Please," he said, "it may be the only thing left of my Zara." Inside the health hut, under the dim glow of an oil lamp, Amani was asked to show her lower back. When the crescent moon birthmark came into view, the room fell silent. The king let out a quiet cry, not of pain, but of long-held grief finally finding voice. He sank to his knees. "Zara," he whispered. "My Zara." Amani flinched, unsure of what was happening. A flood of strange sensations overwhelmed her. Like long-locked doors opening, voices singing lullabies in a language her tongue didn't know but her heart did. Tears welled up in her eyes. She did not yet understand, but she felt. A DNA test was scheduled immediately. Samples were taken, and the convoy departed with promises to return. In the village, Amani's status shifted again. She was no longer just the girl who ate grass. Now, she was the possible lost daughter of a king. Some villagers began treating her with awe, others with suspicion. Children kept their distance, and even the midwife began to call her "Your Highness" as a joke, though Amani never laughed. At night, she asked Mama Ziki to tell her the royal story again. This time, she didn't just listen. She closed her eyes and saw flashes. Crimson fire, screaming voices, strong arms carrying her away. She gasped awake. Mama Ziki caught her. "It's beginning to come back," she murmured. "And when it all returns, girl, you'll know who you really are." The following days were heavy with silence, yet laced with tension. Everyone awaited the DNA results like a rain cloud over thirsty land. Amani, however, seemed caught between two worlds. One built from the pain of survival, the other whispered through fragments of memory. She spent more time alone now, often beneath the old fig tree, where she first cried blood tears when womanhood found her. Mama Ziki observed her carefully, never intruding, though she prepared calming herbs and sprinkled protective powders near the girl's mat. Each time Amani closed her eyes, flashes of a marble palace, music from golden flutes, and the scent of jasmine surrounded her. She remembered a woman's arms, soft and strong, wrapping her tightly during chaos, screaming her name. "Zara! Zara!" It came in echoes. Her heart began to crack open. When the convoy returned, the entire village assembled near the chief's compound. The same woman in Ankara heels, now holding a brown envelope, looked visibly emotional. "We have the results," she said. Her voice shook. "There is a 99.99% match. This girl, known here as Amani, is indeed Zara Adewale, the missing princess of a Bono kingdom." Gasps rose. A goat bleated as though it, too, felt the tension snap. Oba Adewale stepped forward and took Amani's hands in his. "You are my daughter," he said simply, tears shining in his eyes. But Amani didn't weep. She looked at the crowd, at Mama Ziki, and then at the red dust beneath her feet. "What if I'm not ready?" she finally whispered. Her voice, soft and unsure, was heard for the first time in 10 years. The villagers murmured in awe, many crossing themselves or clapping hands in disbelief. Mama Ziki stepped forward, her walking stick planted firmly into the earth. "She has spoken," the old woman declared, more to the heavens than the crowd. "And if her mouth has remembered, then her soul is not far behind." Amani, Zara, felt the earth tilt. The memories weren't just flashes now. They were growing roots. She could recall her brother's laughter, the scent of her mother's shea butter, the mosaic tiles of the palace floor. But she could also remember the day of her disappearance. A rebel had grabbed her during the riots. She remembered being thrown into a truck, then wandering alone in strange towns until hunger consumed everything. Her name, her voice, her past. Until Mama Ziki found her. The world had taken her, but the earth had raised her. Later that night, After the dust settled and the convoy made arrangements to take her home, Amani sat beside Mama Ziki one last time. "If I go," she said softly, "I will return. I owe you my life." Mama Ziki touched her cheek with wrinkled fingers. "You don't owe me. You are the child the gods returned to me, and now they are taking you back. Go, and be who you were born to be." Amani nodded. Her heart was torn between two mothers, one who birthed her in gold, another who fed her when grass was all she had. And as the stars blinked overhead, she knew her journey was far from over. For now, the world knew her name, but she still had to learn who Zara truly was. The journey back to Ebono was surreal. Amani sat in the back of a luxury SUV, draped in royal Ankara fabrics, her hair braided into soft lines, her skin glowing with shea and care. But her eyes, those deep, still eyes, remained locked on the rearview mirror, watching Mwen disappear behind her. The convoy sped through forests, plains, and towns, but her thoughts crawled. She touched the bracelet Mama Ziki had tied on her wrist the night before, a simple string with 3 cowrie shells. "To remember where you came from," the old woman had whispered. Amani gripped it tightly, afraid the palace might swallow her whole. Around her, attendants smiled, eager to pamper her, but she said little. Her voice, though recovered, was still finding strength. The only word she repeated to herself was Zara, a name she now had to live up to. When they arrived at the gates of the royal compound, trumpets blew and drums thundered. Palace maids rushed out in uniform lines, and a tall woman with golden earrings stood at the center, barely holding back tears. It was the queen, her mother. Amani stepped out of the vehicle slowly. The queen ran to her, embracing her before she could think. "My baby," she cried. "My Zara." For the first time in her life, Amani felt the warmth of a mother's heartbeat that echoed her own. She didn't cry, not yet, but her fingers clung tightly to the queen's wrapper. Inside, everything was gold and marbled elegance, but Amani felt like a stranger in a place where everyone knew her name except herself. They gave her a new room, lavish, sprawling, filled with fresh roses and silken bedsheets. Her clothes were laid out like treasures, and 3 servants waited on her word. But Amani couldn't sleep. The silence was louder here. Her memories came faster now. Snippets of her father's voice, her nanny's lullabies, and the scent of burnt incense during palace rituals. But they came with shadows too. The shouting, the fires, the moment she was taken. She curled under the duvet, unable to stop trembling. The next morning, she was dressed in royal regalia and led to the ancestral hall. There, before a large council and tribal chiefs, her return was formally announced. Her portrait was placed back among royal lineage. The nation rejoiced, but inside, Amani felt like a play actor in someone else's memory. That afternoon, she stood before a mirror, wearing a crown of woven coral beads. "You are Princess Zara of Ebono," her etiquette tutor said. "You must carry yourself with grace." But grace was a learned thing, and Amani had lived a life of survival, not royalty. She remembered sleeping on cold earth, brushing her teeth with charcoal, running from wild dogs. She had once eaten grass. What grace existed in that? Later, when no one watched, she removed the beads and slipped away into the palace garden. There, she sat barefoot on the grass and ate a small leaf. Not from hunger, but to remind herself. She was not just Zara of Ebono. She was also Amani of Mwen, and both girls lived within her, pulsing like twin heartbeats, refusing to be forgotten. Days passed, and the palace glittered in celebration. News stations broadcast the miraculous return of Princess Zara, the girl who survived against all odds. Her face was printed on magazines, her story narrated on talk shows. The king's advisors held meetings to fast-track her royal reintegration. Tutors were assigned to polish her speech, etiquette, and history. Amani, now called Zara by everyone, sat through lessons on diplomacy and court behavior. She wore stiff dresses that made her itch and ate food served on golden plates, though her appetite remained meek. She nodded when spoken to, bowed when required, and smiled as expected. But deep inside, she still longed for the taste of roasted maize by a smoky village fire and the peace of Mama Ziki's hut. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw herself between two worlds, one glittering, one grounding. The queen tried to help. She'd sit beside Zara in the evening, brushing her hair like she used to when she was small. "You were fearless," she'd say. "You once rode horses standing up." Zara listened but didn't remember. The bond between them was tender but fragile, like a newly sprouting shoot. The king, meanwhile, grew more protective. He insisted on tight security, refused to let her leave the palace without a full convoy, and declined public interviews unless strictly vetted. "You are a Bono's treasure," he told her. "We lost you once. We will never lose you again." Zara nodded, but her heart pounded. The palace, though safe, had become a prison in pearls. She wanted to breathe without permission. She wanted to feel dirt between her toes again. One morning, Zara woke from a dream where Mama Ziki called her name over a field of grass. The ache in her chest refused to leave. She stood by her window and looked at the capital city stretching far and wide. Glass towers, buzzing streets, people living without guards. Something about that freedom gnawed at her. She turned to her dresser and saw the cowrie bracelet from Mama Ziki. It was fraying. She tied it tighter. That day, when no one was watching, she climbed into the back of a kitchen van scheduled for market errands. Heart racing, breath shallow, she hid among the sacks of flour and sacks of cassava. The palace didn't notice her absence until hours later. By then, the van was already weaving through the city's outskirts, and Zara was halfway to finding herself. She arrived in the market square of a neighboring village and slipped out quietly. The smell of smoked fish, dust, and charcoal wrapped around her like a blanket. For the first time in weeks, she felt invisible, and it thrilled her. She bought roasted plantain with her fingers and chewed slowly, savoring each bite. The vendors didn't know her face. Children laughed around her without fear or formality. It was here, amid the rhythm of ordinary life, that a tall, dark-skinned boy approached her. "You're not from here," he said, squinting. "You look like someone important." Zara smirked. "I'm no one important," she replied. But the boy studied her with curiosity, tilting his head. "Then why does your silence feel royal?" She chuckled. For the first time in a long while, it wasn't forced. The boy introduced himself as Keone, a young herbal apprentice helping his grandmother sell roots and spices. Zara followed him through the narrow, buzzing paths of the village market as he pointed out old fruit trees and the stream where women washed clothes. Everything felt alive, real, unscripted. They sat beneath a mango tree near his compound, and for hours they talked, of dreams of missing mothers, of lives stitched together with threadbare hope. Keone didn't press her about her identity, though his eyes occasionally flickered with quiet wonder. Zara told him she had once lived far away, then closer, then everywhere in between. He simply nodded, saying, "Sometimes the wind blows seeds far from where they were planted, but they still bloom." Zara smiled, and her laughter danced between them like butterflies. In that moment, she wasn't a princess or a survivor, just a girl with grass stains on her memory and hunger in her soul. Back at the palace, chaos erupted. The guards had failed. The media was already stirring with whispers of a runaway princess. The king's temper thundered through the halls. "She cannot vanish again," he roared. The queen, though shaken, defended her daughter. "She needs to find herself. Not the version we created, but the one she truly remembers." The council disagreed. "She is royalty now. She must behave accordingly." Secret teams were dispatched to search the outer cities, posing as merchants, travelers, and aid workers. But Zara was careful. Keone helped her find shelter in a hut once used by hunters. They cleaned it up, lit fires, and cooked simple meals. She swept floors and fetched water from the stream. Each act returned a piece of her voice. She began singing again, softly to herself. At night, she would lie on a woven mat under the stars, telling Keone about the village that raised her, the woman who saved her, and the palace that confused her. "They say I'm someone I don't fully remember," she confessed one night. "But the person I do remember, she's the one who used to eat grass when no one fed her." Keone looked at her seriously, "And the world should never forget her. That girl is the one who kept the princess alive." Zara swallowed hard. Those words struck something deep. She thought of the Cowra bracelet, the old woman's chants, and how her name had once meant peace. Slowly, she was understanding that both Amani and Zara were true. One was her root, the other her crown. The conflict between them didn't mean she was broken, only that she was layered. Meanwhile, news of her disappearance spread fast. Some called her ungrateful. Others romanticized her search for identity. One tabloid even titled their front page, "The Princess Who Missed the Grass." But in that quiet hut beside Keone, she ignored the noise. She washed her hair in the stream, oiled her scalp with coconut, and stitched her own dress from wax print fabric they bought in the market. Days turned into a week. The palace guards were growing closer, but Zara no longer feared being found. She was preparing, not to run, but to return on her terms. And when she did, she would bring the full truth of who she was, grass stains, royal blood, and all. Zara woke to bird song and the scent of boiling hibiscus. Keone had made zobo again, sweetened with honey and clove. She stretched, brushed her teeth with a chewed stick, and walked barefoot to the stream. The breeze was kind, the sky clear. It was her 8th day away from the palace, and she had never felt more whole. Her memories now flowed like a steady river. She remembered how the rebels stormed her family's celebration, how a nanny carried her out through a back gate, and how she eventually lost her protector in a riot. She remembered crying in alleyways, sleeping in markets, and the day she first chewed grass because the pain in her stomach wouldn't let her stand. Each recollection carved a scar into her identity, not one of shame, but of survival. Zara had not just been taken, she had fought to live, and she had won. Keone noticed her change. She now walked with more certainty, her back straighter, her voice calmer. She no longer flinched at sudden noise or ducked from raised hands. At night, she began writing, filling an old notebook with her story in long, careful sentences. "You should share this with the world," Keone said one night, reading over her shoulder. Zara smiled. "One day, when the time is right." Though their bond was strong, there were moments when silence stretched between them, warm, respectful, uncertain. Keone never asked for more, but sometimes, when Zara looked into his eyes, she wondered what love built without secrets could feel like. For now, she allowed herself to rest, to breathe, to build muscle in her soul before facing the palace again. But peace is never permanent. On the 9th day, Keone returned from the market with news. Royal guards had been spotted 2 villages away, showing her photo and offering rewards. "They're close," he warned. Zara nodded. "Then it's time." She wrapped herself in a simple but elegant wrapper, tied a headscarf the way Mama Ziki had taught her, and placed her Cowra bracelet over her wrist. She stood tall in the doorway of their hut and said, "I'm not hiding anymore." That evening, she wrote a letter to her parents. In it, she poured truth like water. Every pain, every hunger, every silence she'd endured. She asked not just to return, but to be accepted wholly. "I cannot live as half a person," she wrote. "I am Zara. I am Amani. I am both." The next morning, She and Keone walked to the nearest royal outpost. Zara handed the letter to a guard and said clearly, "Tell my father the princess is ready to return." The guard, stunned, stammered and bowed low. "Yes, yes, my lady." She turned to Keone. Their eyes held for a long moment. "Thank you," she whispered. "You reminded me who I am." He didn't reply immediately. Then he reached out, touching her cowrie bracelet. "And you reminded me that royalty isn't about crowns. It's about character." Zara smiled, tears pricking her eyes, and stepped into the royal convoy. As they drove away, she didn't look back. She didn't need to. A part of her would always live in that quiet hut beneath the mango tree, where she had found the courage to remember her own story. Zara's return was orchestrated like a national festival. Drums welcomed her, dancers twirled in celebration, and the palace gates swung wide with pride. But this time, Zara stepped down from the convoy not as a confused girl in silk, but as a woman carved from truth. She wore the same wrapper from the hut, her hair in natural coils, the cowrie bracelet visible for all to see. Her mother rushed to hug her, and this time, Zara embraced her tightly. "I needed time," she said softly. The queen nodded, eyes wet with understanding. The king stood beside the ancestral flame, his face stern but unsure. Zara walked to him, knelt briefly, not in submission, but in tradition, then stood tall. "I will stay, but I will not be hidden behind glass. I want to serve, speak, and live." The king blinked, then slowly he nodded. "Then speak," he said. A council was called the next morning. The nation watched, reporters gathered, and even foreign dignitaries tuned in. Zara stepped forward, heart steady. She told her story, not the sugar-coated version, but the raw truth. She spoke of sleeping in gutters, eating grass, dodging hands that sought to harm, and finding refuge in kindness. The hall was silent, gripped by her voice. "I survived not because I was royal, but because I was human. Because people without titles fed me, sheltered me, loved me. I cannot wear this crown if I cannot use it to protect those like the girl I once was." Her words fell like thunder, shaking the walls of tradition. The elders sat still. Then, slowly, one by one, they began to clap. That night, Zara sat by the palace garden, her notebook open. She wrote about Keone, about Mama Ziki, about the scent of cassava leaves cooking on firewood. Her mother joined her with a pot of tea. "You changed," the queen whispered. Zara looked up. "I grew." They talked about the years lost, and the girl they both mourned but finally found. The queen removed a velvet box from her wrapper. Inside was the original bracelet Zara had worn as a child, gold, embedded with sapphires. "This was yours before," she said. "Now it's yours again." Zara took it, then gently placed it beside the cowrie bracelet. "Let them sit together," she whispered. "They both saved me." The queen smiled, kissed her daughter's forehead, and left her under the moonlight, scribbling her truth in ink. In the days that followed, Zara's presence in the palace reshaped its rhythm. She requested to meet orphans, street children, and vendors. She visited markets without fanfare, walking among her people. Her image shifted, from lost princess to voice of the forgotten. Young girls looked up to her not because of her crown, but because of her courage. She launched a fund in Mama Ziki's name, offering scholarships and shelter to displaced children. The king, though old school, began to soften, watching his daughter transform grief into leadership. One night, after a national broadcast of her story, he called her into his chambers. "Zara," he said, voice thick, "you have done what many leaders fear, told the truth. And in doing so, you've healed this family." Zara blinked back tears. "The truth saved me," she said, "and it will save others too." The palace had never felt this alive. Children ran through its gardens during community visits. Elders sat in the courtyard sharing stories, and artists painted murals inspired by Zara's survival. She welcomed them all. No longer confined by titles, she embraced her role as a bridge between wealth and poverty, tradition and progress, royalty and reality. One afternoon, during a children's storytelling session, a little girl tugged her wrapper and asked, "Is it true you ate grass?" Zara knelt to the girl's level, smiled, and said, "Yes. And it's why I'll never let you go hungry." The child beamed, hugged her, and the moment was captured by photographers who didn't need to be told that this was history unfolding. The world began to understand that the girl who once begged for food had become a queen in spirit long before wearing any crown. Despite her growing influence, Zara remained deeply connected to her past. She often visited Mama Ziki's grave, leaving flowers and notes written in their shared language. One particular evening, she went alone barefoot, with a basket of offerings, papaya, garden eggs, kola nuts. She sat in the silence, whispering thanks to the wind. "You gave me a second mother when I lost the first. You gave me dignity when the world tried to take it." Her voice cracked, but she smiled through tears. She planted a young tree beside the grave and poured water at its roots. "Grow strong, like I did," she whispered. And in that moment, beneath a burning orange sky, she felt completely at peace, rooted in memory, yet reaching for the future. Her relationship with Keone had grown too. Though they now lived in different worlds, they wrote letters often, folded in handcrafted envelopes sealed with dried leaves. He refused fame, preferring the stillness of village life. But Zara made sure his village received supplies, books, and health care without ever taking credit. On the night of her 21st birthday, he surprised her by attending the palace celebration. Dressed simply, he stood awkwardly among nobles. But when Zara saw him, the hall melted away. She ran to him and hugged him tightly. "You came," she whispered. "Always," he replied. They danced slowly to traditional drums, and while cameras flashed and guests murmured, all she saw was the boy who'd seen her before the world remembered who she was. Their story had begun in the ashes of survival, and now it pulsed with quiet hope. Later that night, Zara stood on the palace balcony, looking at the capital lights. She thought of all she had lost: innocence, comfort, time, and all she had gained: wisdom, love, voice. She had once eaten grass, not knowing if she would live to see the next morning. Now, she stood taller than any pillar of marble. Her scars hadn't vanished. They had simply become part of her architecture. She touched the gold bracelet on one wrist and the cowrie on the other. "One reminds me who I was born to be," she said aloud. "The other reminds me who I chose to become." The wind wrapped around her like a cloak. Behind her, the kingdom slept peacefully. Ahead, 1,000 lives waited to be changed by her truth. Though Zara had returned triumphant, shadows lingered quietly behind palace walls. Some advisors whispered of unrest, of how her story might weaken the monarchy's image, exposing vulnerability where strength was expected. The royal court was a place of veiled glances and half-spoken words, and Zara quickly learned to navigate this new battlefield. During one tense meeting, a senior advisor suggested shelving her outreach programs to maintain the dignity of the crown. Zara's eyes hardened. "Dignity is not found in silence," she said. "It's found in truth." Her voice echoed like thunder, silencing the room. Yet she knew this was only the beginning. Old power resisted change, and she was the spark threatening to ignite it. One evening, as rain fell softly on the palace roof, Zara received a letter without a sender's name. It was a single page, written in careful handwriting. "You are remembered differently. Beware the faces closest to you." The note unsettled her, but it also steeled her resolve. She confided in her mother, who warned, "Trust must be earned, even in our own house." Zara nodded. From then on, she watched closely, not just outsiders, but those who smiled warmly yet spoke behind closed doors. The grass-eating girl had learned the hard way that survival required not only courage but caution. She would not be caught unprepared again. Despite the tension, Zara's public image grew. The people adored her authenticity, and her speeches inspired a generation hungry for change. Yet at night, she battled her own fears, memories of hunger, loneliness, and betrayal that refused to fade. Sometimes she woke drenched in sweat, whispering Mama Ziki's chants until the dawn chased shadows away. Her diary became a refuge, a place where she poured doubts and hopes without judgment. She wrote, "I am not just a princess or a survivor. I am both, and both are enough." The words reminded her that identity was never simple, and that strength could rise from even the deepest wounds. As the months passed, Zara planned a large event, a conference bringing together leaders, activists, and youth to discuss rebuilding the nation's future. It was her way of bridging past and present, pain and possibility. When the day arrived, she stood before a packed hall, wearing her mother's sapphire bracelet and Mama Ziki's cowrie side by side. Her voice was steady, her message clear. We cannot heal as a nation without acknowledging every story, especially those buried in silence. Applause erupted, but Zara knew this was just the first step. The road ahead was long, winding, and uncertain, but she was ready to walk it, rooted in grass and crowned with hope. The conference was unlike anything the kingdom had seen before. Delegates from all corners, village elders, urban youth, scholars, and government officials gathered under one roof, united by Zara's call for honesty and healing. She opened the event with a story from her childhood, the day she learned to eat grass to survive. Her voice trembled, but her eyes burned with determination. "If I can survive the worst, so can this nation," she told the crowd. The room was hushed, hanging on her every word. Throughout the day, sessions tackled poverty, education, and reconciliation, allowing voices long silenced to be heard. Zara walked among the attendees, listening, taking notes, absorbing the collective grief and hope. It was exhausting but necessary, a step toward mending a broken nation and her own fractured heart. Back at the palace, the atmosphere shifted. Zara's vision clashed with traditionalists who feared losing control. They whispered that her growing influence threatened the monarchy's stability. But the queen stood firmly behind her daughter, reminding the council that change was inevitable, and denying it only fueled unrest. The king, once skeptical, attended the conference's closing ceremony and surprised everyone by praising Zara's courage publicly. "Our daughter's journey is a beacon," he said, voice steady. "She carries not only our blood, but the dreams of all our people." His words silenced dissenters, if only temporarily, and gave Zara renewed strength to push forward. The crown was no longer a symbol of power alone. It was a call to responsibility. Zara found solace in her growing network of allies, activists, educators, and old friends like Keone, who remained a quiet pillar in her life. She made regular visits to communities affected by conflict, sharing meals, stories, and laughter. These moments reminded her why she fought so hard. Not for glory, but for justice and healing. One evening, sitting by a fire in a village surrounded by hills, she held a child who reminded her of herself, small, hungry, but unbroken. She whispered a promise. "You will not walk alone." The child smiled, eyes bright with trust. Zara knew the work ahead was immense, but every small victory planted seeds for a better future. Yet, beneath the hope, Zara still grappled with personal scars. She confided in her mother during late-night talks, revealing moments of doubt and loneliness. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm enough," she admitted, voice barely audible. The queen took her hand gently. "You are more than enough. You are whole because you embraced every part of your story." Those words settled deep, like rain soaking dry earth. Zara realized healing was not just for her kingdom, but for herself as well. And with each passing day, she grew more certain that her grass-eating past was not a mark of weakness, but the root of her strength. Spring arrived, painting the palace gardens with bursts of color. Vibrant bougainvillea, fiery hibiscus, and towering frangipani. Zara found herself walking through the blooms each morning, a ritual of renewal and reflection. She often paused by the young tree she had planted near Mama Ziki's grave, now thriving, its leaves whispering promises of growth and resilience. The tree reminded her that survival wasn't just about endurance, but about blossoming in spite of hardship. She had come far from the days she chewed grass in silent desperation. Now, she was building a future rooted in compassion and courage, one where no child would go hungry or feel invisible. Her vision was no longer a distant dream, but a tangible promise she intended to keep. Zara's initiatives were expanding. She launched community centers offering education, healthcare, and counseling, staffed by volunteers who believed in her mission. She partnered with neighboring kingdoms to share resources and ideas, knowing that healing was not confined to borders. But her biggest challenge remained within the palace walls, where tradition and innovation often clashed. Some courtiers resented her influence, while others admired her fierce determination. Zara refused to let opposition derail her. Instead, she met resistance with dialogue and patience, slowly winning hearts and minds. Her mother's unwavering support was her anchor, and their late-night conversations were filled with strategy and hope. "Every thorn protects a flower," her mother said once, "and you are surrounded by both." Amidst her busy schedule, Zara found moments to reconnect with Keone. They walked through the old village paths where she had once scavenged for food, now laughing and planning future projects together. Their bond had evolved beyond friendship or romance. It was a partnership grounded in shared history and mutual respect. One afternoon, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Keone handed her a small wooden box carved with intricate patterns. Inside was a seed, a gift from his village meant to be planted in the palace garden. "A symbol," he said, "of new beginnings and the strength we carry." Zara smiled, feeling the weight and warmth of hope in her hands. It was a reminder that while her roots were humble, her wings were wide and ready to soar. That night, as the palace settled into quiet, Zara sat by the window, gazing at the stars. She thought of her parents, her lost childhood, and the countless faces who had shaped her journey. Tears came easily now, tears of sorrow, healing, and gratitude. She whispered a vow to the night sky. "I will live not just for myself, but for every child who dreams of a better tomorrow." In that moment, the grass-eating girl and the heiress became one. A woman transformed by pain and purpose, ready to lead her people into the dawn of a new era. And somewhere, beneath the vast African sky, a young tree stood tall, its branches reaching for the future just as she was. The winds that swept through the kingdom carried more than just dust and whispers. They brought change. Zara could feel it stirring in the hearts of her people, in the shifting conversations at market squares, and in the cautious nods of elders who had once doubted her. She had become a symbol of transformation, a living testament that adversity could birth strength. One afternoon, while visiting a rural school funded by her programs, Zara watched as children recited poems about hope and courage. Their voices rose like birdsong into the warm air, and for a moment, she saw her own reflection in their bright eyes, the hunger to survive replaced by the hunger to thrive. It was a scene she wished she could have witnessed as a child, and it fueled her commitment to ensure no child would endure the loneliness she once knew. Yet, change was never easy. Within the palace, factions grew uneasy with Zara's influence. Secret meetings were held behind gilded doors, where whispers of rebellion stirred. Some courtiers feared that her progressive ideals threatened the old order, while others envied the public's unwavering support for her. One evening, Zara overheard a conversation hinting at a plot to undermine her initiatives. She realized that survival meant more than confronting poverty. It meant facing betrayal within her own house. Instead of fear, she summoned courage and wisdom. She reached out to trusted allies, strengthening her circle and weaving a web of protection. The grass-eating girl had learned that power without vigilance was vulnerability. She was determined to protect the future she was building, no matter the cost. Amidst these challenges, Zara's bond with her mother deepened. The queen became her counselor and confidant, sharing lessons learned from decades of leadership. One night, as rain pattered against the palace windows, the queen said, "True change comes when the old and new find harmony, not when one destroys the other." Zara nodded, understanding that her path required balance, not just boldness. She began to engage more with traditional leaders, inviting them into dialogues rather than dismissing their concerns. Slowly, some hearts began to soften. The palace, once a fortress of resistance, showed cracks where new light seeped through. In the quiet moments, Zara found comfort in Keone's presence. Together, they dreamed of a kingdom where no child had to eat grass to survive, where justice reigned, and where every voice mattered. One evening, under the vast expanse of stars, he took her hand and said, "You carry the strength of many. Let it be your shield and your sword." Zara smiled, feeling the weight of her journey settle into a quiet power. The winds of change had arrived, and she was ready to face whatever storms they brought. The morning sun spilled gold across the kingdom, bathing the palace and villages alike in warm light. Zara stood on the palace balcony, watching as life unfolded below. Children running to school, women selling produce, men repairing homes. Each moment was a thread in the tapestry she had vowed to mend. Her journey from a hungry girl chewing grass to a leader inspiring a nation was almost unbelievable. Yet here she was, living proof that resilience and hope could rewrite destiny. The crown on her head felt less like a burden and more like a beacon, illuminating a path not only for her, but for generations to come. She knew the challenges were far from over, but the seeds she had planted were growing strong, nourished by collective will and unwavering spirit. That afternoon, the palace held a grand ceremony to mark a new chapter in the kingdom's history. Zara unveiled the Roots of Hope initiative, a comprehensive program dedicated to eradicating hunger, expanding education, and preserving cultural heritage. Leaders, citizens, and international guests applauded as she spoke with passion and conviction. "This is not just my legacy," Zara declared, "but ours, woven from every struggle, every sacrifice, every dream. Together we rise." The crowd's roar echoed through the valley, carrying the promise of transformation far beyond palace walls. It was a celebration of survival, strength, and the power of embracing one's past to forge a better future. Later that evening, surrounded by family and friends, Zara reflected on the journey that had brought her here. Her mother's eyes shone with pride. Keone's steady presence was a comforting anchor. She thought of Mama Ziki, whose kindness had been a lifeline when the world turned cold. Tears filled Zara's eyes, not of sorrow but of profound gratitude. She whispered a prayer of thanks, knowing that her story was not just about loss or survival, but about the enduring power of love and hope. The girl who once ate grass had become a woman who fed dreams, not just her own, but those of an entire nation. As the stars appeared overhead, Zara stepped outside to feel the cool night air. She planted a hand on the young tree beside Mama Ziki's grave, now tall and strong, its branches reaching for the heavens. "This is for you," she said softly. "For all of us." The wind rustled the leaves as if answering her call, carrying a promise on its breath. No matter where life began, the future could always be rewritten. And with that, Zara turned back toward the palace, ready to embrace the dawn, not just of a new day, but of a lasting legacy. Thanks for watching, family. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications for more stories from us. Also share this story with your loved ones.